Pam Bondi thought she was walking into a routine security briefing until she was shown footage that could bring down some of the most powerful figures in the country. Now she's being hunted. Pam Bondi had been inside Secret Service headquarters plenty of times before. It wasn't the kind of place where people laughed or lingered. It ran like a machine, orderly, efficient, predictable. But today, the moment she stepped past security, something was different. The usual rhythm of the building was off. Agents who normally carried themselves with a quiet confidence now moved with purpose. Quick steps, hushed voices, a few stolen glances in her direction. It wasn't obvious, not at first, but years of political experience had sharpened her instincts. She wasn't just here for a routine briefing. As she approached the main security checkpoint, a uniformed agent with an earpiece met her before she could even pull out her ID. That wasn't normal. "Ms. Bondi." His voice was low, urgent. "Follow me." She hesitated for half a second. The way he said it, like she had no choice, set off an internal alarm. But she wasn't about to show hesitation. "What's this about?" she asked, her tone even. The agent didn't answer. Instead, he pressed his ID against a panel, unlocking a corridor that led away from the usual meeting rooms. Pam followed, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The hallways here were different. No windows. No standard offices. Just a row of doors with electronic keypads, each requiring clearance levels far beyond what she usually dealt with. Her mind raced. Secret Service didn't summon people like this. Not without a damn good reason. Finally, the agent stopped outside an unmarked steel door. No nameplate. No insignia. Just a retinal scanner. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "They're waiting for you inside." Pam didn't blink. Whatever was happening here, someone wanted her to see it. She stepped through the doorway. Inside, the room was dimly lit, dominated by a massive screen covering an entire wall. 3 senior agents stood in front of it, their backs straight, arms crossed. They weren't here for small talk. One of them, a man she recognized as Deputy Director Mark Ellis, turned to her. "Close the door." Pam exhaled slowly, then did as he asked. Ellis wasted no time. "What you're about to see doesn't leave this room." Pam kept her voice steady. "Then why am I here?" Ellis didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a button on a nearby console. The screen flickered to life. At first, it was just security footage. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped less than 48 hours ago. The camera feed showed a side entrance to a nondescript building, somewhere in Washington, D.C. A sedan pulled up. The rear door opened. A man stepped out. Pam's stomach tensed. She recognized him immediately. Everyone would. This was about to be big. But she had no idea just how deep it went. Pam Bondi leaned in, her eyes narrowing as the footage played. The man stepping out of the sedan was someone who built his career on law and order, a name the public trusted. But here he was, moving with a calculated precision, glancing over his shoulder before slipping into the building. She knew that walk. The walk of someone who wasn't supposed to be there. The camera feed switched angles, now showing the inside of a dim corridor. The man was met by another figure, face obscured, but the body language said enough. They knew each other. No words were exchanged, just a nod before the two disappeared behind a heavy metal door. Pam exhaled through her nose. She didn't like where this was going. Ellis spoke up. "The location is a secure, privately owned facility, not government property, not listed anywhere, no official records." Pam's mind raced. She gestured at the screen. "Who owns it?" Another agent, a woman with a sharp gaze, stepped forward. "A shell company registered out of Delaware. Traced it back to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The owners? Completely anonymous." Pam crossed her arms. "And let me guess, this isn't the first time he's been there." Ellis nodded grimly. "We have surveillance covering the last 6 months. He's visited 8 times, always at night, always using a different car, never with a security detail." Pam shook her head. A man in his position didn't just sneak around for no reason. The footage jumped forward. The metal door opened again and more figures entered the room. Pam counted them, 7 in total, all men, well-dressed, confident, like they knew they were untouchable. The camera angle wasn't ideal, but one of them turned just enough for the system to register a partial facial match. A file appeared in the corner of the screen. Pam's breath caught. No. This didn't make sense. The man on the screen wasn't just some businessman or lobbyist. He was someone the federal government actively monitored, a foreign national with known ties to intelligence operations overseas. The kind of person who wasn't even supposed to be on U.S. soil without making headlines. And yet, here he was. Pam turned to the agents. Are we sure this footage is real? That it hasn't been doctored? The female agent crossed her arms. We triple verified it. This is raw, untouched surveillance. Ellis walked over to the console, fast-forwarding the footage. The group sat around a long table, documents spread in front of them. Occasionally someone would lean in and speak, but there was no audio. Pam's jaw clenched. What the hell are they discussing? Ellis let out a slow breath. That's the part we don't know. Yet. Pam exhaled sharply. The pieces weren't adding up. This was more than just a bad look for a politician. This was something deeper. Something coordinated. She turned back to the screen as the footage jumped again. One of the men, an older figure with silver hair and an expensive suit, placed a thick manila folder on the table. The politician reached for it, flipping through the pages. His face gave nothing away, but his fingers tapped once against the paper. Pam knew body language. That wasn't a reaction of surprise. That was confirmation. The meeting continued for another 10 minutes before the documents were tucked away, hands were shaken, and the politician exited the same way he came. Quiet, discreet, like he knew no one would ever find out. Ellis shut off the screen. That's all we have, for now. Pam rubbed her temple. What else do we know about the others in that room? The female agent opened a file. 4 of them are U.S. citizens, all connected through private industries. Energy, pharmaceuticals, defense contracts, high-level players, but not publicly known. The other 3? Foreign nationals, all with deep financial ties to U.S. policy decisions. Pam stared at the blank screen, her pulse steady but her mind racing. This isn't just a scandal, she said finally. This is a negotiation. Ellis nodded. That's our assessment too. Pam looked up at him. And no one in the White House knows about this? A tense silence followed. Ellis didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was low. We have reason to believe someone does. And that was the part that scared her the most. Pam Bondi felt the weight of the room shift. The moment Ellis said, "Someone does," the air grew thick. She studied the faces of the agents in front of her. They weren't just presenting evidence. They were watching her, gauging her reaction. Pam folded her arms. Are you telling me there's someone in the administration who's aware of this and hasn't said a word? Ellis exchanged a look with the female agent. We don't have confirmation on that yet. Pam scoffed. Don't play games with me, Ellis. Either you suspect someone or you wouldn't have called me in. The female agent, whose name tag read K. Dawson, cleared her throat. We think this goes higher than we initially assumed. Pam's mind was already working. A high-ranking political figure, secret meetings with foreign operatives, high-level executives from industries tied to national security. This wasn't just about corruption. This was power brokering. She pointed at the screen. Where was this meeting held? Ellis hesitated. Dawson spoke instead. A private estate in McLean, Virginia, owned by a real estate trust with a tangled financial trail, but we traced it back to a firm that has been flagged before for laundering money through political PACs. Pam narrowed her eyes. You're saying someone inside our system is laundering cash to keep these meetings hidden? Ellis nodded. We're saying someone wants this operation to stay out of the public eye. Pam exhaled sharply. And yet here we are, watching footage from inside that house. Dawson's lips twitched into something almost resembling a smirk. Yeah, that part's interesting, isn't it? Pam straightened. There it was. The detail that changed everything. Someone leaked this to you, she said slowly. Ellis didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. The footage appeared in an encrypted Dropbox on a classified network. Pam took a step closer. Meaning someone inside this operation wants it exposed. Dawson nodded. Or wants leverage. Pam looked back at the screen, her mind racing. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone inside that room knew they were being recorded and wanted the right people to see it. But the question was, why? And more importantly, why her? She turned back to Ellis. Why bring me into this? Ellis met her gaze. Because whoever sent this footage didn't send it to the White House. They didn't send it to the FBI or the CIA. Pam's breath hitched slightly. They sent it to us. And they specifically mentioned your name. Pam's pulse ticked up. What? Ellis crossed his arms. We don't know why, but someone inside that room believes you're the person who needs to see this. Pam processed that in silence. It didn't sit right. She wasn't a sitting official anymore. She wasn't an investigator. So why would someone inside an illegal meeting think she had any power to act? Unless... A slow, unsettling thought crept into her mind. Unless they weren't looking for exposure. They were looking for a messenger. She looked at Dawson. Has anyone tried reaching out since you received the footage? Dawson shook her head. No direct contact, but we started noticing some strange activity. Pam frowned. What kind of activity? Ellis tapped a few keys on the console. Another screen came up. This time it wasn't security footage. It was a digital log. Surveillance records. Pam scanned the list. Then she saw it. Her name, her home address, her phone records, her email metadata. Tracked, logged, monitored. Pam's mouth felt dry. You're telling me someone has been watching me? Ellis exhaled. Not just watching, anticipating. Whoever sent us this footage knew you'd be pulled in, and before you even stepped into this building, they already had eyes on you. Pam ran a hand through her hair. This wasn't just a bombshell story. This was a trap. The real question was, who set it? And what the hell did they want from her? Pam's heartbeat slowed, not from relief, but from clarity. Someone had planned this, down to the minute she walked through that door. The weight of it settled into her chest, cold and heavy. She turned back to Ellis. You're telling me someone inside this operation wanted me to see this? And at the same time, they're keeping tabs on me? Ellis nodded. That's exactly what we're saying. Pam let out a slow breath. This wasn't a coincidence. Her name wasn't just picked at random. She folded her arms, shifting her weight as she thought. So either someone inside that meeting wants to expose what's happening and thinks I can help? Dawson tilted her head. Or? Pam glanced between them. Or someone is setting me up. Silence. Ellis didn't flinch. Dawson exhaled through her nose, arms still crossed. Neither disagreed. Pam shook her head. This makes no sense. If this was about blackmail, or if someone wanted leverage, why not take it to the media? Why not leak it to a journalist or drop it in a congressional hearing? Ellis hesitated. Then in a quieter voice he said, Because they don't trust the system. Pam stilled. That was the real answer. Whoever did this, whoever leaked that footage, didn't believe the usual channels could handle it. Pam had been in politics long enough to know what that meant. This wasn't just corruption. This wasn't just backroom deals and dirty money. This was something bigger. Pam rubbed her temple. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was no longer in office, no longer tied to federal agencies. She had no political power. And yet someone inside the highest levels of government, believed she was the right person to see this, which meant only one thing. They wanted her to act. She looked at Ellis. What do you expect me to do with this? Ellis didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Dawson, who shrugged slightly before looking back at Pam. We don't know. Pam's jaw clenched. Bullshit. Ellis sighed. We don't have an end game here, Pam. We're telling you because whoever leaked this specifically made sure it got to you, which means you're already involved whether you like it or not. Pam turned away, pacing. She could feel the walls closing in. If she did nothing, the people in that room would go on, unchecked. The power deals, the foreign influence, it wouldn't stop. But if she exposed it, the consequences would be massive. A scandal like this wouldn't just bring down a politician. It could destabilize entire agencies, shake alliances, destroy trust in the highest levels of government. And if there was one thing Pam knew, it was that people like this don't go down quietly. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A text. She pulled it out, expecting a message from her assistant or a news alert. But the moment she saw the sender, her stomach dropped. Unknown number. Pam hesitated, then opened it. One line. Be careful who you trust. Pam's skin prickled. Ellis saw her reaction. What is it? She turned the screen toward him. Dawson leaned in to look. Ellis inhaled sharply. When did you get that? Pam didn't answer. She was too busy looking at the timestamp. Received 12 minutes ago. Her blood ran cold. Whoever sent this knew she was here. She looked back up at the two agents. I think we're already out of time. Because someone was watching all of them. Pam's grip tightened around her phone. The message wasn't a warning, it was a reminder. Someone out there was controlling the pieces on the board, and she had just stepped into the game without even realizing it. She locked eyes with Ellis. You said this footage wasn't sent to the White House, or to the FBI. Ellis nodded. That's right. Pam exhaled, shaking her head. Then whoever leaked it knows how deep this goes. If they don't trust law enforcement, intelligence agencies, or even elected officials, then we're talking about something way beyond politics. Dawson crossed her arms. More than just a scandal. Pam met her gaze. More than just a cover-up. Because if someone inside that meeting had been reckless enough to get caught, they would have already cleaned it up. That meant whoever sent the footage was either deeply embedded or completely untouchable. The question was, why involve her? Pam turned back to the screen, scanning the paused frame of the hidden meeting. 7 men, a mix of American elites and foreign operatives, and one well-known politician who had built his entire reputation on national security and loyalty to the country. Pam let out a dry laugh. Does he know he's been caught? Ellis hesitated. No. Pam gave him a sharp look. You're telling me he's walking around like nothing happened? Dawson shifted slightly. If he knew, we'd already see signs of damage control. Pam knew what that meant. No sudden resignations. No anonymous sources breaking a controlled version of the story. No strategic media leaks to soften the blow. This was still contained. For now. Pam folded her arms. So, what happens next? You sit on this? Wait until it's convenient to act? Ellis didn't flinch. We brought you in for a reason. Pam's mouth twitched in frustration. And what reason is that exactly? To be the middleman? To take the fall if this blows up? Dawson's voice was calm. To make a choice. Pam exhaled sharply. She didn't need this. She could walk out of here, pretend she never saw a thing, go back to her life and let the people who still held power deal with it. But deep down, she already knew that wasn't an option, because whoever sent that message to her phone didn't just want her involved, they expected her to be. She looked at Ellis. What happens if this gets out? Ellis's face was unreadable. Depends on how it gets out. Pam turned her phone over in her hands. She could do this the right way. Quiet inquiries, back channels, legal procedures. But that would give the people involved time. Time to bury evidence. Time to discredit her. Time to make sure this never saw the light of day. Or she could take the risk. Go straight to someone who couldn't be controlled. But before she could say another word, a loud buzzing sound cut through the air. The agents froze. Ellis grabbed a device from his pocket, glancing at it before looking up. His expression was grim. We've got company. Pam frowned. Who? Ellis turned to Dawson. Check the cameras. Dawson moved quickly, typing a series of commands into the console. Within seconds, a live feed from the building's entrance appeared on the screen. Pam's stomach dropped. 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, no plates, the kind of vehicles used when people wanted to move unnoticed. Ellis swore under his breath. Pam's pulse ticked up. Tell me you were expecting them. Ellis didn't answer. Dawson's fingers moved across the keyboard. They're not here for a scheduled meeting. She looked up. They're here for us. Pam felt her breath hitch. Whoever was behind this, whoever had been watching, was done waiting. And now they were coming to make sure the truth never left this room. Pam's muscles tensed. The SUVs idled outside, no one stepping out yet. But she knew how this worked. Whoever was inside wasn't here to talk. Ellis moved fast. We need to shut this down, now. Dawson was already on it, fingers flying over the keyboard. Scrubbing all logs from the system. If they get in here, they won't find anything. Pam swallowed hard, watching the live feed. The driver's side door on the lead SUV cracked open slightly, just enough for someone inside to get a look at the entrance before shutting it again. They were waiting. She turned to Ellis. Who the hell are they? Ellis's jaw clenched. If I had to guess, private security. The kind hired by people who don't want their names attached. Pam's stomach twisted. Shadow operatives. People with no official ties, no paper trail. The kind of men who didn't ask questions before carrying out orders. Dawson's screen blinked. Shit. We've been locked out. Ellis's head snapped toward her. What? Dawson's fingers flew across the keys again. Someone on the outside is overriding our system. They're cutting off access. Pam stepped forward. You mean someone inside this building? Dawson didn't answer, but the look she gave was enough. Pam felt a rush of heat crawl up her neck. She had spent years around powerful people, enough to know that the dirtiest secrets were always protected from within. They weren't just being watched. They had already been compromised. Ellis reached under his desk, pulling out a secured briefcase. He popped the latches, revealing a burner laptop and a separate hard drive. Pam raised an eyebrow. You always keep an escape plan? Ellis didn't look up. I don't like surprises. Dawson was still typing furiously. We have 3 minutes tops. They'll either force entry or someone will let them in. Pam exhaled sharply. So, what's the move? Ellis pulled out a flash drive. Everything we have is on here. We need to get it out of this building before they reach us. Pam looked toward the live feed again. One of the SUV doors was now wide open. A man stepped out. Dark suit. No visible badge. But the way he moved, like he already knew he wouldn't be stopped, sent a chill through her. Pam turned back to Ellis. And you think they're just going to let us waltz out of here with that? Ellis shook his head. No. That's why we need a distraction. Dawson nodded toward the side exit. There's a secondary stairwell leading to the parking garage. If we get there first, we have a shot at slipping out. Pam glanced at the screen again. Another man had stepped out of the second SUV. They weren't just here to intimidate. They were here to clean up. Pam took a breath. She had spent her entire career standing on the right side of the law, believing that the system, for all its faults, could self-correct. But what she saw tonight? This was beyond corruption. This was a machine designed to keep the truth buried. And if she walked out of here, she wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a target. Ellis handed her the flash drive. You're the only one who can run with this. Pam hesitated. What about you? Ellis's expression was unreadable. We'll slow them down. Pam's pulse quickened. That's not a plan. That's a death sentence. Dawson grabbed her jacket. We don't have time to argue. Pam stared at the small device in her palm. She had a choice. She could leave it. Let someone else fight this battle. Go back to a safe life. Pretend she never saw this. Or she could run. Take the truth and expose it. Even if it meant becoming a fugitive. Even if it meant she would never be safe again. Pam clenched the flash drive in her fist. The men outside were moving toward the entrance. She turned to Ellis. Buy us time. Then without another word she ran. Pam's breath was steady, but her pulse was pounding. The hallway stretched before her, empty but for the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Dawson was right beside her, moving fast, her eyes locked on the service stairwell at the end of the corridor. Behind them, Ellis stayed back. A diversion, a sacrifice. Pam didn't like leaving him behind, but there was no time to hesitate. Dawson yanked open the stairwell door, and they slipped inside. The cold, sterile air of the concrete shaft hit her like reality itself. Pam forced herself to focus, one step at a time. They took the stairs fast, their shoes barely making a sound against the concrete. Halfway down, Dawson whispered, "We get to the lot. We find an unmarked car. We leave D.C. immediately." Pam nodded, gripping the flash drive in her palm like a lifeline. But just as they reached the last flight, a door slammed open above them. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Coming for them. Dawson cursed under her breath. "They're here." Pam didn't stop moving. If they hesitated now, they were done. She pushed through the exit door, bursting into the underground garage. Rows of government-issued vehicles lined the space, their dark surfaces reflecting the dim overhead lighting. Dawson scanned the lot. "Keys. We need keys." Pam pointed. "Over there. Key lockbox on the far wall." Dawson sprinted ahead while Pam kept watch, heart hammering. Then, more footsteps, from the stairwell. Pam whirled around, pulse hammering. The first man stepped out. Black suit. Silent confidence. No hesitation in his stance. He saw her immediately, and he wasn't surprised. Pam felt a weight settle in her gut. They knew she would run. Dawson ripped the lockbox open and grabbed a fob. "Go!" Pam turned and bolted toward the nearest car, yanking the door open as Dawson dove into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. Then, gunfire. Sparks snapped against metal as bullets pinged off the car's exterior. Dawson floored the gas pedal. The tires screeched, the car lurched forward, barely missing the armed men now storming the lot. Pam twisted in her seat, eyes locking onto one of them, the man from the first SUV. His expression was eerily calm. He wasn't chasing. Because he didn't need to. Pam's stomach twisted. They weren't trying to kill her, they were trying to control her. Dawson sped toward the exit ramp, swiping the clearance card against the reader. The gate groaned open just as more men poured into the garage behind them. And then, they were out, speeding into the night. Pam's breath came fast, her hands gripping her knees as she tried to process what had just happened. Dawson glanced at her, voice dead serious. "Where do we go?" Pam looked down at the flash drive in her palm. She had it, the truth, the evidence, the proof. But the real question wasn't where to go. It was, who could she trust? She turned to Dawson, exhaling slowly. "I know exactly where we're going." And she prayed she was right. Pam Bondi had spent her career believing that the system could fix itself, that the right people, with the right information, would do what was necessary. But that night, as she raced away from the very institutions designed to uphold justice, she realized something else. The truth isn't always enough. It has to land in the right hands. And not everyone wants to hear it. As long as power could be bought, as long as people in control could decide what the public gets to know, then corruption wouldn't just exist, it would thrive. Pam had a choice: stay quiet and let the world believe the lie, or risk everything to expose the truth. And for the first time in her life, she knew there was no going back. The real fight had just begun. The truth is only as powerful as those willing to defend it. What would you do if you found out something the world wasn't meant to see? Would you risk it all to reveal the truth? Or would you walk away, knowing that silence might be the only thing keeping you safe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make you think twice.